Hi guys, welcome to Westminster Uncensored. I'm Michael Heaver.
I'm Patrick Christies.
And today on the show, the Telford grooming scandal. Why is it being ignored by the state broadcaster? Also, comments from Vince Cable and Priti Patel. We'll also be giving you all the latest on Brexit. As ever, jump in, tell us what you think, and if you like what you see, don't forget to give us a retweet and a like. And Patrick, where else to start but this grooming scandal?
Yeah, well, absolutely. This is the horrific news, really, that Britain's facing up to what could potentially be the worst ever case of child sexual exploitation on an industrial scale, it would seem, in Telford in Shropshire. It's emerged thanks to a Mirror investigation that around 1,000 girls, young girls, vulnerable young girls, have been drugged, raped and or sexually abused in the area over the last 40 years. This is clearly just the latest in a string of similar incidents. But today on Westminster, we're really asking, why hasn't this been covered by our state broadcaster, the BBC? Why has the government remained tight-lipped on it as well? It seems slightly odd to us, but we want to know what you think. So please do pile in with your comments and let us know what you think.
Just to give you the background on this, guys, this is a Sunday Mirror investigation. We had the story up there, we can get it back up for you now. Basically, authorities accused of failing to act over 40 years, despite repeated warnings to social workers, with up to 1,000 girls, some as young as 11, abused in Telford. It is a truly sickening, a truly harrowing story. So many, it's an 18th month investigation, so many things put forward here. Social workers knew of abuse in the 1990s, but police took a decade to launch a probe. Council staff viewed abused and trafficked children as prostitutes instead of victims, according to previously unseen files. Authorities failed to keep details of abusers from Asian communities for fear of racism. Police failed to investigate one recent case 5 times until an MP intervened, and one victim said cops tried to stop her finding out why her abusers had not been prosecuted because they feared she would not talk to us. That's all in this Sunday Mirror investigation. And sadly, it's all too familiar, isn't it? You know, hundreds of girls abused.
Thousands, really, thousands over the years.
Up to 1,000 in one town. The scale of this is utterly horrific. And so many, I mean, some of the quotes in this are harrowing. We'll go to them in a minute. But we're asking you now, why is this not getting the coverage that it should? Yet another grooming scandal in this country, on the streets of this country, has been allowed to happen over decades, seemingly. Why is this happening in our country?
We've seen some comments flowing in already from Marcus Fu saying they're scared to death and are cowards. Jane Sherratt saying shame on our government, speaking specifically there about obviously the government's lack of outrage, it would seem, about this particular incident. Michael's given you some specifics there. But I mean, look, guys, we've done a story on Westminster, which I'm sure if you visit our website you can see, on the overall scale of the thing. But we've also been onto the BBC's website, obviously a taxpayer-funded national broadcaster here, and we're seeing the fact that it doesn't appear that they deem this newsworthy, and that is despite the fact that obviously this has, it would seem, directly affected more than 1,000 girls and a lot more as well. The fact that it's been on the front page of many other national newspapers, the public interest here is clearly monumental. And, you know, why isn't this seeming to get the coverage that it would deserve?
I just want to, before we get to the BBC aspect of this, I just want to read out a quote from the original Mirror story, just to bring this home of what is going on in our country. One 14-year-old girl, groomed and abused after her phone number was sold to paedophiles, said, "I hated what was happening and my abusers made my skin crawl, but I was told that if I said a word to anyone, they'd come for my little sisters and tell my mum that I was a prostitute. Night after night I was forced to have sex with multiple men in disgusting takeaways in filthy houses. I must have been getting the morning after pill from a local clinic at least twice a week, but no one asked any questions. I fell pregnant twice and had 2 abortions. Hours after my second termination, I was taken by one of my abusers to be raped by more men. The worst moment came just after my 16th birthday when I was drugged and gang raped by 5 men. Days later, the ringleader turned up at my house and told me he'd burn it down if I breathed a word of what had happened." That is one example of hundreds, potentially thousands across the country, of what is going on in working class constituencies, working class areas with very vulnerable young people on an industrial scale. And today we ask, how can this not be leading on the BBC's website? How can this story not even be under the UK section? When we look at it now, the UK section of the BBC website, you have activist disrupts Crufts grand final.
Yeah, they've got a piece
Ex-housing boss got excessive payout, but not this.
They've got a piece on how to feed the birds as well. That's on their overall homepage there. They've got a piece about Jamie Carragher spitting at a 14-year-old girl. But there's seemingly no place for this widespread monumental level of abuse. And I think I want to know what you guys think about this really. Does this actually have a wider connotation for society? Because, Linda Macaulay says here, just shame on the BBC. And yeah, a lot of outrage generally here on Facebook. But I mean, I think, does it beg a question here of a wider fear in society of actually raising this issue? And I've just got some wider points here on the topic. This is not the first incident that we've seen. Obviously, the latest one here in Telford in Shropshire, roughly 1,000 girls are believed to have been sexually abused. Girls aged between about 11 and 16 as well. In Rotherham, of course, 1,400 girls, potentially fewer, less, the figures vary there, aged between 11 and 16, raped, sexually abused. Around 50 girls in Rochdale, around 278 victims believed to be in Newcastle. Derby, there's been 26 girls between the age of 12 and 18. Oxford, 300 children aged between 11 and 15. Again, sexual abuse, obviously. Bristol, young girls, didn't give a figure on this, but it's believed to be in the tens of them. Young girls raped in a, quote, rough, callous and nasty manner, leaving them humiliated and bleeding. Peterborough, girls as young as 12 were raped there. Around 10 men were found guilty. And what I find staggering is, you look at this now, we've seen absolutely nothing, really, as far as I'm aware, from the government on this. We've seen nothing from the BBC. And I think it asks, where are we as British society? If we can't talk about this issue, then it's never going to get resolved. And how many, you just make you ask, do you think, I want to know what you think about this, is the BBC really putting its viewers kind of above the welfare of these young girls? Is the government putting votes ahead of the safety of young girls? How many children's innocence need to be lost before this government takes serious action and actually starts protecting young girls, really?
Guys, we're going to be talking about this a lot now. It's something we're really going to push on with Westminster. This is the beauty of the internet. It gives us the voice to be able to get these stories out there that should be out there, that should be being talked about. So if you support what we do, please do give us a retweet. Please do give us a like. Please do visit westmonster.com. We've got Dan Gilbert on Twitter saying it doesn't fit the BBC narrative. Type in Telford Grooming and on the BBC website. Nothing. And I just, the thing for me is, guys, this is potentially the biggest grooming scandal we've seen. But let's not forget, we've had Rotherham, we've had countless others. We did a story on Westminster the other day in Rotherham. The latest numbers now looking at upwards of 1,500 victims, again, in another town, according to the National Crime Agency. The NCA inquiry uncovered an even larger scale of abuse, 110 suspects identified, and trials lasted for this year. Of those suspects, 80% are of Pakistani heritage. The political correctness that's getting in the way of this issue now, I think, is off the scale. How can this be going on in town after town after town of hundreds of young girls being drugged, being groomed, being raped? There was even talk in the Mirror story of some girls potentially have even been killed. It is absolutely astonishing that this is going on and that there isn't a bigger furore and bigger outrage about it today. This has been allowed to happen. It must not ever happen again. But we saw again a worrying thing with the Rotherham story. I remember Channel 4 News actually had one of the former victims on, and she said if you go down Rotherham now, you can see it still happening. You can see young girls in cars with older men. I've asked Sarah Champion, the Rotherham MP, on Twitter, in her opinion, does she see that? In her opinion, does she still think it's going on in Rotherham? She hasn't actually answered
she hasn't.
But that, for me, the incredibly worrying thing here, guys, is that we find out all this stuff and people get put in prison for it, but then it is allowed to go on.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's the real worry.
Absolutely. And I mean, we've seen, like, with Sarah Champion, the MP in Rotherham, she seems like she's quite a good constituency MP. She really did do a big piece in The Sun, I believe, where she basically said, look, we need to be able to talk about this now. This is an industrial scale. It's organised crime of the most depraved order, really. And she was silenced by her party and basically told to cease and desist. And I mean, this is absolutely outrageous. And this is one thing that I think the question has to be raised, doesn't it? Is political correctness getting in the way of us actually discussing it? And I want to know what your points on this are. Because Sarah Sayers is saying that on Facebook, thank you very much, Sarah, for getting in touch, saying it's a nationwide problem. And if we just deal with the facts, and you take out maybe the reasons behind it, just deal with the facts. Unfortunately, most of the people that have been found guilty of this and sent to prison have been of a particular ethnic persuasion, that being of South Asian ethnicity. And so really you do have to look, are we ignoring this as a society for fear of political correctness? I don't know. What do you reckon?
Tracy on YouTube, thank you very much for your comment, Tracy, saying concentrate on Brexit, we can sort this shit out later. No, I'm sorry. We do a lot here on Westminster on Brexit, as regular viewers will know.
This is very important.
We're pushing for full Brexit, we're pushing for full border controls. But what is more important, and I think there's a big class aspect to this, guys. You'll remember all the stories we've done about knife crime in London, right? Over New Year's, for instance, you had 4 young men in 4 separate incidents killed, murdered, stabbed to death in the streets of London within 24 hours. And where was the outrage? There wasn't any. There was a little bit of local press coverage, a little bit of national press coverage, and then it was gone. And then it was on to the next young man, the next young man, the next young man. Every week now it feels like in London there's a young guy getting stabbed to death. We did a story today about in Oldham about a young man who had been to mosque and got stabbed to death in broad daylight there. We seem to see these things time and time again, and there's a complete lack of outrage, as if it's somehow normal now. As if some young men getting stabbed to death, these grooming scandals. Why are we not seeing bigger outrage about this? Is going on now. This has been going on for years.
Yeah, and look, guys, we've just our viewers have just jumped up. We've got 1.2 thousand of you watching on Facebook Live now, which is great. Thank you very much. If you're just joining us, look, we're tackling an issue here at Westminster that most people, including the state broadcaster of the BBC, have decided is not newsworthy, and we are obviously asking why that is the case. This is the shocking announcement, if you're just joining us, of course, that around 1,000 girls have been drugged, raped and sexually abused in the Telford area in Shropshire. Clearly this comes after the scandals such as Rotherham, Rochdale, Oldham, to name but a few. We've also had some in Derby and Oxford. And we're asking, look guys, why is this not being deemed newsworthy by our state broadcaster? Why has the government come out and not really said anything about this at all? Is this not really time now? How many more, and my question would be to these people, how many more vulnerable young girls, a lot of them from the working class areas as well, have to be sacrificed at the altar of political correctness before, and have their innocence completely tarnished, taken away from them, their lives destroyed, before we stand up and actually do something concrete about this terrible issue?
And as we say, let's go back to the UK section on the BBC website right now, right? This is the latest version we've got. So you've got stories here about activists disrupting the Crufts Grand Final, for Christ's sake. And yet the greatest, the potentially biggest grooming scandal that we've seen has no place. This is what we're dealing with, and I'll read it again. You read the harrowing account. You know, you've got to think about what people are actually going through here. A female who was abused, saying, I hated what was happening. My abuser made my skin crawl. I was told if I said a word to anyone, they'd come for my little sisters and tell my mum was a prostitute.
Terrible,
night
isn't it?
After night.
It's intimidation. It's absolutely.
Being raped systematically. These are the things that matter. And yes, we will keep talking about Brexit. Of course we will. But what can be more important than when we talk about young girls in working class areas being abused and groomed in this sickening way, and having young men stabbed to death on such a regular basis? What can be more important than that?
But I mean, what does this say about British society? We're supposed to be one of the oldest countries in the world, one of the bastions of democracy. Our legal system is held up as like the exemplar across the world. Our society is supposed to be one of the most cultured, intelligent societies there, but we're not big enough to be able to confront a monumental issue that has apparently, if you add all these abuse cases together, could have affected the lives of more than 3,000 young, vulnerable girls. We're not able as a society, it would seem, to confront that as a government or properly in the media. And I think that gives a very damning verdict about where we are as a British society. And really, it's common sense, isn't it? How are you ever going to be able to sort an issue out if you can't even talk about it? And this is a real problem. And I'll just make the point again, how many children's lives, I would try and make this appeal to the government, police forces across the country. You know, while you are maybe thinking, oh, no, we better not say this in case it's a slightly controversial topic, do you understand how many hundreds and thousands of girls are actually going through presumably the worst kind of trauma that you can possibly imagine because you are failing to deal with this problem? It's terrible.
Guys, if this is the first time joining us, we're on uncensored YouTube, Twitter and Facebook. It's 1 o'clock, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. You can visit westminster.com for all of these stories and more. This is certainly something that we are not going to be backing down from. We're not going to be shying away from it. It's something we're going to be talking about more and more because, as I say, what can be more important than the safety and the well-being of young people in our society, of our families, of our friends, of our communities? We owe it to those people to highlight these issues and make sure that it isn't just swept under the carpet and that it can't just be ignored. And those that choose to ignore it because it doesn't fit their political outlook or they find it a little bit too uncomfortable, we're going to be breathing down their necks every which way until they cover it. So I hope by the end of the day, this is up on the BBC website. It should be up there, and I fail to see why it is not a leading item on the website.
I do think the BBC does a lot of fantastic work, but they've completely lost the argument here of being some kind of impartial, straight down the line, valuable news source. If a story like this comes up, a story that could be potentially Britain's largest ever child sexual abuse scandal, and they deem that not worthy of coverage, I find that very odd, and you have to ask the question, why? And now, guys, look, in case you are joining us just for the first time, we are live and interactive, so we do read out some of your comments. So Alison White has been in touch saying they are trying to silence us. Sandra Blackmore-Wood saying we have no real justice system now. Absolutely there.
Fantastic reaction to the show today, by the way. So thanks very much for the support. Please do give us a like, give us a retweet, and visit westmonster.com/support if you'd like to support us.
Yeah.
We are going to be talking now about Brexit and some very, very interesting comments over the weekend. Vince Cable.
Yes, Vince Cable.
Sir Vince Cable, sorry. Sir Vince Cable.
Right, yeah. Vince managed to wake up and shuffle onto a stage, and then he said that basically he was very, very critical of everyone who seemingly voted for Brexit, making the kind of sweeping prejudice generalisation that he would apparently expect from Brexiteers. He said that too many were driven by nostalgia for a world where passports were blue, faces were white, and the map was coloured imperial.
I mean, what a disgusting comment. It shows you yet again, doesn't it, I think, that this whole mentality some of these people have, they're off their rockers. They seriously think that people went and voted leave, but a world where faces were white. Sorry, why do people like Vince Cable not understand very simple fact that to govern your own country, control your own borders, make your own laws, these are very normal things. Negotiate your own global trade deals. These are normal things. And yet you get painted out by these people, and this is of course why the Lib Dems are bombing, as some sort of extreme position. It just shows you the fringe mentality now of the Liberal Democrats as this anti-Brexit party. There is no great outflow to reverse Brexit.
People are agreeing on Facebook here, saying Joanne's just saying it's disgraceful, and Jane Lombard just saying his party is irrelevant. Tanis Poolen saying Vince is out of order, he's digging deep and getting nothing. And this is interesting, isn't it? Because why is it okay, I wonder, for people to get on stage and make these sweeping generalised statements, basically brandishing everyone who voted Brexit as a racist? I mean, that's absolutely outrageous, but I think it just goes to show maybe how out of touch really some of these politicians are, and that is why they lost the referendum. That's maybe why, as Michael's rightly said, that the Lib Dems are bombing, it would seem, at the minute, and they're showing no real signs of recovery. Is it because they just don't really get it, I wonder? What do you guys think? Because Susan Hunter thinks Vince is past his sell-by date and out of order.
Diane on Facebook ain't no big fan either. His cables are twisted, really, and we pay him, question mark. Yeah, I just think it sums up. A great contrast this, actually, is Brexiteer Priti Patel, who made some very interesting comments. Of course, she campaigned for Brexit. We had it on westmonster.com this morning. Basically, very interesting comments on the subject of race and labelling. She said, I don't like the labelling of people. I don't like the term BME. I'm British first and foremost because I was born in Britain. I challenge all my colleagues in the Conservative Party and in Westminster, don't label me as BME. I've said that to the people in the Cabinet. I've said that to civil servants. I think it's patronising and insulting. And for me, Priti Patel, what she sums up there is the kind of society that we want to live in, isn't it?
Yeah.
Where to vote one way or the other isn't about skin colour or gender or background. It's about you as an individual, what you feel and think. And look, some people want to have an EU army and they want to be governed from Brussels, and we don't turn around to them and say there's some sort of racist agenda or some sort of bigoted, xenophobic, nasty agenda. In my opinion, they're massively wrong. But it boils down to this sort of hate that we're now getting on the Ramona side, where you're an incredibly nasty person if you want your own parliament to make its laws, if you want to control your borders, if you want an independent country. You're a horrible racist.
Yeah, well, this is it. John,
it's desperate stuff.
John Fowler on Facebook here. Thank you very much, John. Please, guys, do keep your comments coming in. Give us a big like and a share as well. Pauline Rutherford just saying Liberals are finished. Loads of comments. Your comments are coming in thick and fast. Now, the country... Shane saying they are so out of touch with the real people of Britain.
Needs Anthony saying on Twitter, it shows the mentality of these people. Danglebert again saying they don't get it, they don't listen, that's what we're up against.
This is a
the arrogance is unbelievable.
Brilliant intervention here from Sandra saying, I voted to leave, but I am one of 15 children from all walks of life who've married into my family. I love them all equally. It has nothing to do with what race people are at all. And I agree with that. You know, when I went into the polling booth and voted for Brexit, at no point during my decision-making process or in the actual act of me voting for Brexit did anyone's race or colour come into it. You know, and it's really disgraceful to claim that about someone.
And it is something we do a lot on Westminster now, guys, because it seems to me every single time you put the TV on now or something, there's either the favourite subjects at the moment in the mainstream media seem to be banning things, talking endlessly about gender, or talking endlessly about race. Now, surely if we want to be a country where those things don't matter, where we judge people as individuals on their individual merits, on what they think, on how they are, on how they present themselves, on the way they put forward their arguments, we've got to start binning this very divisive identity politics that basically puts you in a box according to the traits that you happen to be born with. It's bizarre, frankly, that you would say to someone, this is the group that you belong to because you were born this way.
There's a certain irony here.
It's a very weird mentality.
There's a certain irony here, isn't there? Though? Because normally when people watching that are on the right, people would normally be bracketed there as more likely to be racist, but at the minute, you know, you look at the left and you see, gosh, that's a horrible place to be at the minute, isn't it? The left-wing side of things at the moment, you know, they are trying to pigeonhole people. It seems to be whether you're just compacted into this tiny little box of transgender or black or ethnic minority or this, that and the other, you whatever sexual orientation you are, you're squeezed into this tiny little box, and that defines you now. You know, and can you tell me what that is doing for the unity of British society by putting everyone into these little microcosms that they must operate in based on, as Michael rightly said, a lot of traits and characteristics that they can't help but be born with? I find it absolutely mental, and I really do think this is doing more to damage society than everyone, certainly like me. I don't have any prejudices or anything like that, and that's surely more uniting for the country.
Guys, if you're enjoying the show, as ever, we're here on Monday, Wednesday and Fridays, 1 p.m. UK time. If you are enjoying the show, please do give us a retweet, please do give us a like, and please do visit westminster.com/support. Give us a few quid if you support what we do. If you want to see us expand, if you want to see us do more shows, we've got lots planned, but we need your support. So it's westminster.com/support. If you go there after the show and help us out, we really appreciate it.
I've had one of my favourite comments ever here from David Baguette.
We do love the comments.
David Baguette, can you just say, is it pronounced the French way like baguette? We don't know, but he just said, what a nice young man. I'll take that all day long.
He's obviously talking about me, surely.
Thank you, I'm not sure, Michael.
I'm not sure about the young.
No, not sure about that, mate.
Okay, right, moving swiftly on then. Just back onto Brexit. Very interesting story. A data poll out from the weekend, basically on the whole issue of Brussels bully boys. And that was an ORB poll carried out for the Telegraph that found 67% of Brits agree that the EU is trying to bully the UK in the Brexit negotiations, with just 17% disagree. And I think this is very interesting because what it also showed was that 49% of Remain voters take that view as well, right? So this whole thing you get in Westminster all the time about Leave voters think this and Remain voters think that. Look, most of the country now is united behind Brexit. There is no big push to stop Brexit. And I think what people are now looking at is they want a government that gets on with it and delivers what the country voted for. I think that is the mainstream view. Very interesting, though, that 67% can see now what the Brussels bully boys are up to. They can see the tactics, they can see their hardline approach, and I think they're steadily turning the British people, even those that voted Remain, even more against the European Union, because they can see just how unreasonable it is. I mean, the stuff over Northern Ireland was just unbelievable. The financial demands, the demands for...
Well, the EU army side of it, you know, that kind of thing. I mean, that's a big factor for me when people talk about a second referendum. It's all very well and good people on the left there saying, look, you know, I've voted to Remain, I'd like to stay, and we need to have another go because essentially we lost. That's all very well and good, but how do you think you're going to win a second referendum in the full knowledge, the fact that Martin Schulz wants the United States of Europe by, I think it was 2025, and Jean-Claude Juncker's pushing for an EU army, presumably Britain would have to stay. They're two things that the British public are never going to chomp on, you would have thought. And how do you expect to win that? I don't know. What do you guys think?
Spike saying, when are we going to start selling T-shirts? We'll keep your eye on that.
Hey!
It's in the pipeline. We've got Van Living saying these guys are not even reading the BS on Periscope. So, I mean, I guess I busted your bubble there, my old son. Took the jam out your donut on that one. We've got a lot, just picking up, because obviously we touched on Vince Cable basically calling all Brexiteers racist. We're still getting a load of comments in about that. So Andy Bestwick just saying, I voted to leave, so did millions of other people, so stop whinging by calling us all racist. Just give us
what we voted for. This is absolutely, I mean, this is really kicking off. Cable's thinking is conducting the thinking which leads, well, it's absolutely shocking stuff here. Yeah, people basically saying that the gist is that Vince Cable's lost a load of respect from you guys by kind of using the kind of prejudicial language that you would not expect from someone who was a Lib Dem. How the times have changed, eh?
Yeah, and another interesting part of the Vince Cable quote was he said apparently their votes on one wet day in June. Was it wet? I don't remember.
It was actually, yeah, it was.
Crushing the hopes and aspirations of the young for years to come. Oh, I'm sorry, you old son. This is something else they can't get through their noggins. Is that there were actually quite a few young people that voted Leave. I mean, I don't know if I consider myself young, relatively anyway.
Yeah.
And going around the country, there are a lot, particularly I would say working class kids who've been screwed up by things like mass migration when it comes to housing, when it comes to NHS, when it comes to school places. That voted Leave. And this whole painting out of old versus young, it's yet again the left basically playing this identity politics game of, God, we'll play people off against each other according to age.
Yeah.
That's basically the game yet again.
Jane saying it's emotive nonsense. Mark Cook saying it's a sad state of affairs. And I mean, there's actually an astonishing amount of hatred here towards it. It's Cable in our comment section, but it just shows the level of vitriol that you would have when somebody tarnishes your reputation or your name and with just a sweeping comment that doesn't represent you at all. You're clearly going to be angry, I would imagine. Now, I find this absolutely outrageous, but I think it's ridiculous. But Lynn Martin's hit on this, saying liberals are finished, Europe is finished, and so is this really a sign of desperation from Vince Cable there, whose party's tanking? His party seems to be going downhill, sinking quicker than the Titanic, as I say. Is this a desperate attempt to kind of whip up some kind of furore against Brexiteers? I don't know, but it's just out of order. Really.
Going to this whole EU bullying, just going back to that for a minute, we've got another story on this.
About
the EU could try to sue Britain.
Yes.
We've got this whole thing at the moment. We'll go to the story in a minute, but the whole thing with Brussels at the minute, they've actually put out a document saying that we don't want the UK to take competitive advantage when it gets its independence. Sorry, the country voted for its independence, voted to take back control and become self-governing. And the EU has the arrogance, the audacity still to basically say, well, you can be independent, you can leave, but we're only going to do a deal with you if you basically don't use it to change anything that may, give you a competitive advantage. I mean, it's absolute arrogance. And I think it shows you, again, the mentality in Brussels that's now translating through to British voters, that people are starting to look at this organisation and think, wait a minute, is this a club or is it a protection racket?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a bit... So they're showing their true face a bit here, really, aren't they?
That was the story.
Yeah, so we've seen the story there. I mean, basically, the gist is, with this one specifically, is Donald Trump's up trade tariffs on steel and aluminium across the European Union. But because Britain's leaving, we want to be exempt from these EU-wide taxes on account of the fact that we would no longer be in the European Union. The EU has said, oh, no, we'll just sue you if that happens. Well, I'm sorry,
lovely.
but... This is all a bit weird, isn't it? Because basically, the European Union, if you just take into one neat little nutshell what it's said so far since Brexit is, do you guys kind of mind carrying on staying in the customs union or staying with regard to trapped single market, staying trapped under our legal systems, our rules and regulations, being under the thumb of our own court? No, you're not allowed to take competitive advantage over us. And actually, do you mind still paying the same amount of tax to us on a tariff that no longer applies to you? What? This is crazy, isn't it? Absolutely bonkers. But I want to know what you guys think about this. What's your latest on the Brexit negotiations? Calvin Heppel is just laughing so much here, crying with laughter it would seem. Facebook saying, sue Britain, you couldn't make it up. This is the kind of general gist, isn't it really, guys? I mean, it's absolutely crackers here, really.
But guys, it's been a great show. We've had a lot of you watching today. Don't forget, we'll be back on Wednesday, same time, same place, 1 o'clock. We'll be tackling, have you seen today? We will not shy away from anything.
No.
Any issue that's on the table. If you want us to talk about anything, you let us know and we'll do it.
Yeah, please do get in touch. You can get us on Facebook, you can get us on Twitter, of course. You can email us directly. My email's on my Twitter page there, at Patrick Christie. Shameless little plug to see us off. But yeah, look, guys, I think there's a comment here that really summed it up for me today. Ernest Nicholas saying, it's great to hear some positive views on Brexit. Well done, guys. Well, look, we do want to keep bringing you the stuff that you don't normally hear across the media here at Westmonster. Please do support us. Westmonster.com/support.
Yep, give us a like, give us a retweet. Westmonster.com/support. We will see you on Wednesday. Have a great week. See you then.
Take care, guys.